Good morning. Yesterday I did some additional pouring on the water feature using realistic water, and I also affixed the white water that I had made using water effects. It's a real simple process. You just take a non-stick surface, it can be like a Teflon pan or a piece of wax paper, and you put strips of the water effects down in the length that you want them to be, side by side, as close together, touching, so that it'll form like a single unit when you get through with it. And then once you have them laid out on the wax paper, you take, or the Teflon pan, whatever, you take a little bit of white pigment and mix that in with a toothpick and kind of blend it together to get the permanent white effect. If you don't use white pigment, they'll come out looking more like ice, like semi-clear, slightly opaque, like icicles would look, for example. But blending them together like that, you then have something that you can trim from the sides or from the ends as you need to in order to fit your space, and you create the white water that way. Here, for example, I did that last falls you see coming into the water feature. The bottom falls there where it comes off the little lip there of the land up above it into the water feature as a little cascade, and that was done using that technique. Today, I'm going to finish pouring, or at least I'm going to start pouring. I shouldn't say finish because it may take more than one pour, into that area that's kind of in the center. The way that the water feature has ended up, I have basically 6 pools. Starting here at the top, there's 1, then 2, and 2 small ones, that's 3 and 4, another small one, that's 5, and then the final area towards the end, that's 6. So I end up with 6 pools that have divisions between them. The divisions are made using, depending on where it is exactly in the layout, the divisions are made using either a structural dam, which would be in the form of the 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch stained wood that I picked up at basswood that I picked up at Hobby Lobby. And in other cases, I'm using a product from Woodland Scenics that they call deadfall. Deadfall is just bits and pieces of dead wood, basically twigs, branches, that sort of thing, that have been broken up into small pieces with the bark removed for the most part and dried, and then Woodland Scenics sells it as a product. You could go out and gather the same thing from a park or in your yard or whatever and do the same thing, create your own deadfall material. If you do that, I would suggest that you want to make sure it's thoroughly dry before you get started. So I'm going to move on and pour some realistic water into that last water feature pool, and that should get us through the day. It'll take probably the rest of the day for that to thoroughly dry and cure. The other pools I have allowed to cure since I poured them early yesterday, or mid-morning yesterday. So I'm going to do this next pool now, again using this Woodland Scenics product, Realistic Water. It's really quite simple. You simply pour the water, realistic water, in to your water feature and let it flow and fill in. If you do this fairly slowly and carefully, you can get it without splashing and without creating too many bubbles. One of the things you really never ever want to do is you never want to ever shake this. If you shake up this product, you're going to fill it full of bubbles, and when you put it down in your layout, that's going to be a problem for you because you really don't want all those bubbles into in the water course in your layout. A few, won't make too much difference because that will, in some case, enhance the realism. At least it'll look, pretty natural. But if you're just full of bubbles because you've shaken it up, it's not going to have the effect that you want. You're not going to achieve the look that you want. So pouring it very slowly, carefully, letting it trickle down and kind of guiding it around so it fills in where you want to fill in. That's what you want to do. And I'm also avoiding pouring it on top of where I've got down logs or I've got boulders, that sort of thing. And that also is going to help. I need to pour some in here in between where I have the dam built. That dam is basically built out of some logs and other deadfall debris, as I said earlier, that I got from Woodland Scenics. And I'm putting some around that to fill in spaces between that. Now, I've got probably pretty close to a 16-inch layer all through here now. And I'm going to just add a slight bit more so I can bring it closer to the bank here where I want it. But I don't want to try to overdo it, so because I don't want to get too deep out there. Once you've done that, once you've done your pour, then the next step is to really take a close look and see if you've got any bubbles. If you have any bubbles, and almost inevitably you'll have a few, you can burst them a little bit with the end of a toothpick. Use a clean toothpick and do that. Another thing you can do with that clean toothpick, and it just really adds to what you want to accomplish here, is to break up the surface tension, if you will, along the edges and kind of drag the realistic water up against the edges so it's not, the surface tension isn't creating a bulge just short of the banks and short of the edges. So I'm doing that along here. I'll put this pour in place, and I'm going to let this pour now dry for a while. But I'm using a toothpick to kind of drag it along the edge here, and that will prevent there from being the surface tension of the liquid from creating a bulge that is a fraction of an inch back from the edge. So by doing that, it gets the more realistic look that you're always striving for. Now, also, one of the things that you want to do here, as I said before, is not pour too much at a time. Better to come back multiple times and pour a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more to get to the level, the depth of the realistic water that you want to achieve, as opposed to pouring too much at one time and not having it cure up properly. I've got this pretty much where I want it right now. I'm going to put a little more back in this area here, back at the beginning of the water course, and I'm going to do the same thing here. Again, I'm going to pour fairly slowly. I poured here yesterday, so I have already created some realistic water in here yesterday, another layer of it. That would have been my second pour up in this area, I believe, yesterday. So I'm going to put a little bit more in here today, and I'm going to again, try to keep it to about a 1/16 of an inch. This will flow a little bit after you pour it, but it still gets it where you want to be better if you kind of move it along and help it by guiding it along to where you want it to flow. The total effect of this is really not apparent until it's completely dried. So here I've got this section now filled in with another pour of realistic water. I'm not seeing any bubbles in here, which is a good thing, but I do have some bulging along the edges here. and I'm going to drag that over to the edge. Actually, I've got much less of that occurring now with this pour than I did with the earlier pours. It seems to be kind of like, because it's already had some pores in there, it's not bulging along the edges as much, so it doesn't need to be dragged. Do not use a paintbrush to try to smooth it along the edges. Use a paintbrush, you're not going to be happy with the effect that you have at all. It's going to end up really messing up the surface and really making it look kind of lousy. Another thing that you can do with this, if you're wanting to achieve a different look to the water, is you can add some pigments to the water, and those pigments can make it look like murky water, or make it greener, or make it blue, or make it look different from what it looks just coming out of the bottle. And if you do that, and then you take your paintbrush and try to pull it towards the shore to fill in, to eliminate that bulge from surface tension, you'll end up pulling the pigments out of the paint, which you don't want to do. So, quick and easy, that's what we've done today. We've done another pour in this pool, first pool, and the second pool, and we're going to call that good for now, and we're going to let this cure thoroughly before we consider doing anything else. So as always, I appreciate your time in watching, and I encourage you to please click the thumbs up below, the like. That's a big boost for me. I appreciate when you do that. So click the like below, and if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe, and feel free to share this video with anyone else you know who's interested in modeling or model railroad layouts, or any kind of other modeling that they might want to be doing. So, as always, thanks for watching. I appreciate your time. Bye for now.